Hello and welcome everyone. This is Patch Notes Rundown Developer Update 11.8 and I'm joined as always, now it's always, by the great Molegion. Thank you for taking the time.
Hello Ryan. Yeah, I suppose it's always for a couple of months so far.
Exactly.
Except that one time when you recorded with a push-up. We don't count those.
We don't count those. All right, so we are gathered here today to talk about the upcoming changes for tomorrow's update, 11.8, dropping on August 8th. And we've got some, you already said before we started the recording, we're going to be polishing some cards, especially some new cards, but also some old cards. And this is an update between card drops. We just had a new card drop, the Tide Rises, and now there's going to be another one next month in September. So this is like the in-between update where we take a look at some cards that might need some little adjustments, some dials turned. And is there anything you want to say before we jump into the first slide of changes?
Yes. So as you said, this update mostly focuses on tweaking the cards that we recently released. We have a couple of buffs for the older cards as well, but it's not a huge content update. What we plan to do, however, is the next patch, the one you will see tomorrow, is 11.8. This patch, as we said, is an update with balance for new cards. 11.9 will be the patch with new content. 12 new cards will be coming to the game, as well as a handful of reworks. We want this to be a big content patch, if possible, because it will also be the last content patch like this that we'll be making, right? Mm-hmm. And in 11.10, we will be delivering some final fixes to make sure that nothing is really left without our attention. Mm-hmm. If something we release in 11.9 requires our changes, we will make sure that it gets what it needs. So basically the plan right now is that the 11.9 will be a bigger update, 11.8 is a balance update, 11.10 will also be a balance update. And then we enter GWENTfinity, where you guys will decide on what gets better and what gets worse.
So yeah, this is probably one of our biggest system changes that's going to be coming, the community balance system. And as you said, we want to introduce it in 11.10, so October this year. Is that correct?
I believe so, yes.
Obviously, plans might change. Everything's still in development, but that's our plan right now. You've heard it here first. And that means that we will be still around while you will get your hands on it for the first 1.5-2 months, so we can still adjust a few things if necessary and make sure everything works fine.
Yeah, I think we will have separate communication for this feature, but I just wanted to give some info from inside the team, so you guys know what is coming, what to expect in the next 3 patches.
Yeah, awesome. All right, with that being said, let's take a look at the first changes. We've actually got 7 slides today, 6 factions plus neutrals. Everything's getting a little bit, some more, some less, but let's take a look at neutrals. And we can already see that Molegion said I kind of debated everyone by putting Hen Marvin's Blue Dream as the main asset. It is getting a little bit of love. 2 provisions, it's cheaper now by 2 provisions. Same goes for Cosimo Malaspina. Provision cost changed from 9 to 7, and then Blue Dream changed from 12 to 10. Do you want me to run through everything first, or do you want to maybe talk through some things before?
I think we can talk about them one by one.
Okay.
I think it will be better this way.
Yeah, then let's start at the top for you.
Yeah, so neutrals don't really have reactions for the last expansion because, well, we didn't release any neutral cards. But neutrals are also the pool of cards that has the most cards that just straight up pass, right? Like they are not really played, and those who dare to play them don't get great results. So that's why we always try to give neutrals a little bit more attention. I know that people have mixed feelings often about neutral cards, right? Because if they are too good, they also become very omnipresent, so to speak, right? Like they are everywhere. But we really want to make sure that vast majority of the cards are viable, at least, right? Like they make some sense and you can build something with them. So yeah, that being said, we can start with Cosimo. So Cosimo is mostly a fun card, right? It's not really a guy you can trust to give you big value, but he can provide some funny moments every now and then. So yeah, he was pretty overcosted at the release. We are a bit careful with cards like this usually, but I think we were a bit too careful. He can probably be cheaper and still not be too competitive, but provide an opportunity to maybe build something funny and get some moments that the great Dandelion show would put in the video if it still existed.
Rest in peace.
Yeah, rest in peace. But yeah, that's it for Cosimo really. I guess I can talk about Blue Dream since you read it already. So yeah, as Ryan said, I was laughing that maybe the graphic in the background or the graphic in the graphic in the background is a little bit of a bait because the change is not that big. However, what we are doing here is we are changing, lowering the provision cost of Blue Dream by 2. Right now, it matches the provision cost of Renew, which isn't really fair because Renew is just a straight up good reuse card for one of your cards like Colgrim or stuff like that, right? Something really powerful. And Blue Dream is a little bit more dependent on what your opponent has, so we thought it's fair for it to be cheaper. Is it good? I'm not sure, but I think for 10 provisions, you could consider it definitely more often than for 12, right?
Yeah. All right. Yeah, I think those free up a lot more options for your deck building, and then we also get to Iris von Everek, proper German pronunciation. Power change from 5 to 6, and provision cost change from 6 to 8. Ability change to at the end of your turn if this card is in your graveyard. Boost all units in your deck by 1 and then banish self. So a little bit more expensive actually, but also more powerful.
Yeah, so current ability on Iris, you could almost say it's a placeholder because it just gives Vitality 4. It's nothing exciting. The character has a pretty interesting storyline, so well, it makes sense that she could something better. And well, if you know her story, I don't. I know the game is the expansion is what 6 years old, right? I believe.
Yeah.
Hearts of Stone.
It feels wrong to spoil. Yeah.
I still won't spoil, right? But her story is pretty sad. Let's just say that, and we gave her an ability that we think fits it a bit more, as well as something that synergizes with, for example, Iris Companions. So what you can do with this card is you can either put her on the board and let her die somehow, or maybe you want to directly put her in the graveyard through maybe some discard effects or something else. But when you do that, you will get some carryover. So that's ability is actually quite simple, but more interesting, I think, than Vitality 4. So yeah,
Certainly.
sorry if somebody will miss Vitality 4. I'm sorry, but we just felt like this is the better way.
Yeah, I think that honors her a lot more. All right, Mandrake and Shiana both drop down by 2 provision, also become cheaper to run. Mandrake now 6 provision and Shiana is 10 provision.
So Shiana and Mandrake, I guess I can talk about them together. Maybe it seems weird, but I believe those are 2 cards that can potentially explode a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Like they, for example, Mandrake is a bit of a sleeper card but it can really activate some really silly combos. For example, you can use Mandrake to reactivate Defender that was purified, right? So if you have something that creates like an Exodia but is very vulnerable and you really need to rely on having this Defender, then Mandrake will help you. So why are we lowering the provision cost by 2 in such case? Well, 2 reasons. First of all, for 8, the card is really seeing pretty much no play.
Yeah.
So we don't like when cards see pretty much no play, basically. And 2, if the difference between this card seeing no play and this card absolutely breaking the game is, around 2 provisions, then we would rather know now than in a year time, for example, right? Because you guys will be able to vote it to be cheaper. And if this is really what makes the difference, if we know it now, we can do something about it, right?
Yeah.
And if it's fine, then maybe we just made the card a bit better. Maybe some decks will play it, but it will still be manageable, right? And I think Sienna is a similar case. It's a card with a really low floor, but extremely high ceiling potentially in certain combos. Like doubling the deployability is no joke, right? And it's kind of similar, right? She sees not much play right now. She's, I think, a bit iconic, especially for people who like so-called meme decks. But yeah, if those 2 provisions would make the difference between such cards, going from something that is not played at all, something that is extremely obnoxious, now is the better time to know it. So that's about it for neutrals.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll make these changes now and then still have a little bit of time to observe the reaction and adjust if necessary. Next up, we've got SKELLIGE, our favorite islands, and they have a few changes here as well, starting at the top with Utah. And she's got a power change from 12 to 13 and a provision cost change from 7 to 6. So instead of dropping by 2 provisions, she gains a power and drops 1 provision.
Yeah, so what's the background here? When we did this buff to Greatsword that they gave him a veteran, it was a pretty successful buff. The card became significantly better, and its performance was pretty good. But many people rightfully pointed out that he is now, in many ways, just better Utah. And Utah. You could joke that she asks, "What is my purpose?" and the only answer is, "You get thrown by the blaze of glory." But even if that's her purpose, it would be nice if nobody did her job better, right? And Greatsword could do that job better, and was a better individual card, and also was cheaper. So we are making Utah cheaper. We are making her power higher, so she has some upsides over Greatsword in certain situations. And yeah, maybe. Even if she's still niche, this is enough of an encouragement to give her a try.
Gotcha. Then to a rather recent card, Catrolda dropping. Actually, no, wait, gaining a provision cost, so it becomes a bit more expensive to run.
Yeah, so Catrolda was one of the better cards we released last drop. Very flexible, very good order ability. So yeah, we just made it more expensive, simple as that. The nerf seems maybe a bit mild, so to speak, but it also comes with some other changes in the faction, right? Like the one that we can see below, so we didn't want to over nerf it. And the increase of provision cost from 9 to 10 is also a significant one, right? Because it removes it from the available pool for Golden Egg.
Yeah.
So yeah, just a bit more expensive.
Gotcha. Then we have the Armorsmith, a card that was recently changed or adjusted, and now its power has been changed from 2 to 4, and provision cost has gone down from 5 to 4, and the ability has also been changed to deploy boost an allied unit by 1 for every 2 armor on the highest armor unit in your hand.
So yeah, it was a recently reworked card, as you mentioned, Ryan. So before the rework, we considered Armorsmith to be one of the weaker cards in the game. We did the rework. We thought like it was a good rework, right? Like, no doubt the card became much better. For many people, it even felt too strong, and it was like statistically its performance was all right, nothing that we would normally nerf, but it was very, very, very popular. And also, I think it's very understandable why people dislike it, because after all, it's a bronze card, and under right circumstances, you can see huge boost numbers, right? The ones that just don't feel right for a 5 provision card, right? So on the other hand, it can also break and be useless in certain situations. So we were looking for some solutions that maybe decrease the ceiling a bit, but also increase the floor. And here we are, right? So now the power of the card itself is a bit higher, from 2 to 4, right? The cost is cheaper, so yeah, those are pretty decent buffs. However, the boost will be twice as small, right? So basically, for every 2 armor, you will get a boost. So if you have, for example, 7 armor on the highest armor unit, you will only boost by 3, right? Because it gives you boost for every 2 armor, so that 1 armor extra on top of the 6 is not 2 armor.
Yeah.
So you want to get an extra boost.
Gotcha.
Some people in the test server said that it might even be seen as a buff. We will see how it actually performs. But I think the most important part is that you won't see those huge boost numbers anymore. Or at least not that huge, right? Like, I guess if you try really hard, you can get like 30 armor on something and still get huge boosts, but it should be fairly rare. So yeah, the goal was to maybe reduce the ceiling of a bronze card.
Yeah, I think, as you said, you can still go for, excessive combos for it, but if you do, it's like the more you lean into it, the less of a return you actually have compared to earlier. And I guess in the future, if we need to adjust it, maybe have you considered just decreasing its biceps, its arms? I think everyone's just jealous of this jacked armorsmith,
Yeah. I mean, let him have this, he was so bad for so long.
True.
So at least let's make sure he keeps that.
All right. Moving on to Funeral Boat. Its ability now only triggers during the owner's turn. I assume this is because there were some unwanted effects that this had on gameplay.
Yeah, it mostly comes down to the fact that the card also was quite controversial, as many people felt like it takes over the game too easily. So we added some consistency because Vran Warrior has similar effect that only triggers during your turn. So basically we made sure that Funeral Boat also follows this pattern. So yeah, I mean that's pretty much it. It should reduce the point output of the cards quite a bit, but not that hard. Again, it's similarly to Armorsmith. It's a card that is definitely strong. It's popular, but it's not like that dominant in the meta. So the goal is to maybe reduce the reduce the popularity. Sorry. And in general, maybe reduce the power output of the deck a little bit, because we also nerfed its most competitors, right? As you will see later. So
also, if a card is a high popularity, maybe I shouldn't be giving away this game dev secret, but if we nerf a card just even slightly, it triggers the community to think that the card is worse now. So even if the effect might not actually be that much worse, people will less often run it in their decks in the end.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not that much of a secret. It's something we call a nerf bias, right? Nerfed cards always get a little bit less popular after the patch, no matter how big the nerf is.
Exactly.
I mean, it matters how big the nerf is, right? It will often make the difference how big the drop is, but there is always a drop. That's the point.
Exactly. All right. Now let's take a look at our green faction. This is one of the factions that have a little bit less changes. As you can see, there's exactly one. Hostage Taker has gained 1 power.
Yeah, so this is actually the power level of Hostage Taker that you could see during the reveal campaign. Because we had 4 power, we had a pre-release change between the reveal and the release of the expansion to make it free, because internally we were getting really good results with the trap deck, and we were a little bit worried about this being a strong deck, because traps are a controversial topic, right? And even though we wanted to change their identity a little bit to not be so focused about not having any units, and maybe be less frustrating to face. Because of that, we still didn't want it to be the top, the front runner in the expansion. So we did those pre-release nerfs. However, after letting players play with the deck, with the new cards a little bit, we can see that the way SKELLIGE is mostly played right now is it's not really a full-on trap deck. It's mostly just an elf deck that uses some of the trap cards, which it was also a thing we anticipated. We knew that such deck could be good because some of the new cards just are decent with it. But the all-in trap deck is not so strong. So we still believe Hostage Taker is good. So we are giving just a little bit encouragement to maybe give it a little bit more try, and maybe together with the nerfs to the top decks, this deck will see some more light of the day. Hopefully not too much, right? So don't go too crazy on it. But I imagine nobody will by seeing 1 power buffs. But again, I think context matters. The fact that other top decks are nerfed is also important.
As I said before, this is like the opposite effect, kind of the buff bias, kind of.
I this one is much less, let's say,
actual
present.
Effect.
It doesn't take effect that often, unfortunately. But maybe it's still enough. It sometimes helps.
All right. Taking a look at their mortal enemy, we go to the Northern Realms and we have King Demavend III, which has a cooldown change from 2 to 4. Double its cooldown.
Yeah, it's a pretty significant increase because it means that you basically have to rely on cooldown reduction to fully trigger his effect. But what we could see with Demavend were, for example, some silly combos that just played Winch over and over again, and you could pick the order multiple times just in a chain. The King Demavend is a card that is extremely, maybe not extremely, right? Like with this combo, it wasn't extremely risky, that was the point, but it's potentially risky with a pretty big gain. But we didn't feel like the risk. We felt like the risk was too easy to bypass with cooldown reduction. So basically, his cooldown is doubled. So no more winch chains. I mean, you can't do that, right? But you will need to do some
extra
some more work. Yeah, some extra steps if you want to continue in that direction. That's it for Demavend.
Shout out to the pubs who created an artwork of King Demavend as a printer that just prints winches, which is pretty on point. Next up, we've got Onaga, and its provision cost has changed from 4 to 5, so a little bit more expensive to run.
Yeah, also another one of those cheap cards together with Funeral Boats that was really taking over. And seeing your entire board die to pings can be a bit annoying. And this one provision nerf, it's also a bit mild. I think I understand that many people will say that maybe they wanted some more, maybe they wanted to put a cap on it. We try to be careful with over nerfing in this patch, because sometimes we over nerf cards and they become really
dead,
forgotten. And our goal right now is to have a game in a state where as many cards are viable and played by the community as possible before we launch the GWENT. We made it a bit more expensive. Some people can say that, hey, but that means you can buff it with Muta Generator, right, or stuff like that. But at the end of the day, it's still 2 provisions less that you can put in a deck, and maybe when you see it pinging stuff here and there, maybe it's easier to justify the point output that the card can potentially have when it's 5 provisions than 4 provisions, right?
Yeah.
And also it was in many ways just better than Tridam Infantry. So at least we, even like if you play it with like Traveling Priestess, Onager just does the same thing as Tridam Infantry, except you can boost whatever you want. Well, nothing stops you from playing both, right?
Yeah.
But we we basically want to give it a cost more appropriate for the ability without maybe taking drastic moves such as capping the amount of points you can do per turn and stuff like that. This is still something that we might consider if the card overperforms, but we wanted to try it like this for now.
Gotcha. All right. Oh, there's that's the signal to go over to NILFGAARD, where we also have one change. The Imperial Marine is now 5 provision cost.
Yeah, NILFGAARD is doing alright in this expansion.
They're vibing.
Yeah, they're vibing. We only have one nerf really here, the Imperial Marine. Again, I think it's a similar situation to Onager, where the card is so strong that it's maybe hard to justify it being only 4 provisions. If some people compare it, I think it's a fair comparison to Witch Apprentice, a card that grows by 2 points per turn.
Yep.
If you have Sabbath. And yeah, basically Imperial Marine grows by 2 points per turn if you have a specific card on top of your deck, and it also, you can look at it as a consistency tool before that. So yeah, 5 provision costs seems more appropriate. Not a huge nerf, something that, for example, doesn't affect Bakala at all, the card that spawns it, and Imperial Fleet, but still something that will require players to maybe modify their NILFGAARD decks a little bit.
Seems fair. All right. There's one more slide for us to dive into. Actually, 2 more. Sorry, I forgot that we also have these lovely gentlemen, monsters. Lord Riptide first. Armor changed from 0 to 2, which means it gets 2 armor. And then also armor gained from might changed from 2 down to 1.
Yeah, so we are mostly happy with where Ogroids landed after the expansion. It's a deck that we anticipated that it will steal the show early, probably, because usually when we release new cards, we try to make a prediction of which deck is the most obvious, right? This one usually takes over the latest. The earliest, and which deck is maybe the hardest to figure out. This is spoiler. This is pretty much always Syndicate. Syndicate always is terrible in the first week, statistically speaking, at least, and then it just becomes really good. It's very annoying because with our schedule, we usually have to lock in patch pretty early, and usually around the time when we lock the patch, Syndicate is like, I'm the best faction now, what are you gonna do about it? But yeah, monsters, I know it felt very, very powerful early on. I think I saw that its performance went a bit down after that. However, we still wanted to make a small change to Lord Riptide mostly here. His damage potential was pretty big. So what we did here is we increased the base armor. So again, there's an increase of the floor, but the armor per might is now lower, right? So you want to be able to get a ton of armor and just deal a lot of damage for fleets. It won't be that easy. And also one thing that we couldn't deliver for last patch, but something that we wanted to do is change to Spontaneous Evolution. It's the card that rewards you differently for using it on units of different categories, so Ogroids, Beasts, or Insectoids. The Ogroid effect that gave 2 armor to the Ogroids wasn't maybe terrible because it had some synergy with some of the effects. But instead, what we are doing now is we are spawning a Necker on the row of the unit you just boosted, and additionally we are increasing the boost in general for it. Some people could say that it's maybe an undeserved buff for Spontaneous Evolution because it's a decent card in Araka's Swarm. But Araka's Swarm is not it's doing all right. It's not overperforming. It's I would say even slightly underperforming. So we think this 1 power buff to Araka's Swarm on Spontaneous Evolution will not change that much. and maybe it encourages to use spontaneous evolution on some other categories. So yeah, Ogroid players, your Riptide may be a bit weaker, but maybe you want to try spontaneous evolution.
Give it a shot. Be spontaneous and
Yeah.
maybe evolve your deck with it. All right, that's
Yeah.
it from me.
Unfortunately, it's not it's not an Ogroid, right? So it won't grow your King Chrome, but
True.
that's the sacrifice you might be willing to take anyway.
Sometimes those are worth making. Now, you already mentioned Syndicate, and that is actually the last faction that we're going to take a look at. There are 3 changes. First up, Captain Yago. Provision cost change from 13 to 11. 2 provision cheaper, quite a lot.
Yeah, so I said before that Syndicate in the end became the strongest faction, which is true, but not because of Captain Yago. Captain Yago didn't really find his place among the top cards, or even the good ones, or even the okay ones. He deserves a bit more, you know. Like, come on, it's the captain of the Akironsia.
Yeah.
Let's make him a bit stronger. We made him quite expensive at first, but this 2 provision buff, I think it's totally justifiable given the performance of it. However, his ship not so weak.
Not so weak at all.
Yeah. The Akironsia allows for some incredible chains and plays that were one of the big reasons why the deck is performing so well for now.
Quite visible also at the mid-season tournament.
Yeah. Wait, at the mid-season tournament?
I mean the reaction to the cards, you know, the
okay, yes.
the change that people already thought before they even got the card in their hands.
Right, yeah. So now basically the device is increased by 2, right? So if you want to play those cards, you need to spend some more coins. And that's for now the only change in Syndicate. I know that many people maybe expected a bit more given the performance of Syndicate in the recent days. We have this deck still on our radar, and hopefully we will be able to make appropriate changes to it in the next update. But maybe this will still tune down the deck a little bit, and I think it's a pretty significant nerf, right? Because it slows down the chain by quite a lot. Something that we are considering, for example, feedback we received from pro players. So a shout out to I believe it was Trutsky. Open Sesame is one of the, for example, cards that some people point out to us the reason why this deck is so powerful, because you can get a lot of carryover, you can create with shady vendors. We weren't able to change it before locking the patch, but I think so. Open Sesame is, for example, one of the cards on our radar. So yeah, more changes with Syndicate might come or might not, depend on the performance of the faction in 11.8. There's also a buff to Akironsia deck, and similar to Captain Yago, the faction was strong, but not because of him again. I think it's funny that the ship is so good and the crew is just it's like maybe some people joke around that in Formula 1, you know, like it's bullshit, but oops, I said the S word, but yeah, some
it's
people
not about the driver.
Yeah, it's not about the driver, it's all about the car, right? I don't know if that's true, but in this case, but Akironsia deck, and fun fact, we initially tested him with Vice 2, and we were pretty consistently getting like 20 something points with him, and he's a 4 provision card. So we thought that we can't ship it like this, right? Ship it, not pun intended. But so we made the Vice to 3, and making him the Vice go to 3 was all that was needed for the card to be completely ignored. And we think it's a bit better than that. That is, you know, a card that is just not played. So we are giving him Profit 1. It's not a ton, but hey, it's a coin you can spend for your Vice, so use it wisely.
Yeah.
Maybe it will change the deck, the Syndicate decks a little bit at least.
And Syndicate is such a complex faction, there's always extra benefits to whatever you do. So if you gain one coin, it's not just about the coin that you have, but also other cards that benefits from you gaining coins and stuff like that. So yeah, we'll see where it ends up. All right, Molegion, I think that concludes our patch notes rundown, our developer update right there. Some spicy changes. I'm excited to see how it shapes and shakes up the meta. And I'm actually pretty stunned to say that the next time we'll be speaking, at least in front of the camera, we'll be talking about new cards again.
Yeah.
How's that?
That's true.
So close.
Yeah. Not a long break between those drops.
Yeah.
It also will be the last time we do it.
Yeah, I feel like the year has just started and then it's already halfway done, more than halfway done, and next patch will be the final card drop of GWENT.
Yeah, it's not just a year. I still I feel like Homecoming was released, yesterday. Like, no joke, the last 5 years were so quick in my life. So
I completely agree. Maybe there was something that also sped up time in between, like a pandemic. But other than that, time flies. So thank you once again for joining me here, and thank you all for watching out there and continuing to support us playing GWENT, sending nice messages and leaving feedback online. And yeah, then that means that we'll see you in about a month. Enjoy the patch tomorrow, and bye.
Bye-bye.